Yeah, I was a big fan of the book, and I really like how.
You must have been if you're only asking New Warriors questions,
Sorry,
because
he's
usually the Deadpool question would have come by now. So I'm glad that it's been nothing but New Warriors so far.
Damn.
Job at Marvel Comics in August of 1985 on staff in the manufacturing department. And 4 months later, an opportunity opened up in the promotion department, and I wanted to do that because that's what I'd gone to college for, advertising, public relations. So I took the job in the promotions department, and a year later they named me advertising manager. So that was 1987, which is also the year I sold my first story to Marvel. It was published. And that was it. So I was on the inside, and that's how I started to sell more and more of my writing.
The New Warriors, did that happen first before X-Men?
Yes, New Warriors happened before I got on X-Men, but New Warriors happened after I'd already written Psi-Force as a monthly title, which was a New Universe book, and then I had what I call my year of scut work, which was annual backups and inventory stories and getting to try to sell things at different editors and different size formats, like 8-page stories, 5-page stories, whatever I could do after New Warriors ended. I'm sorry, after Psi-Force ended, I did. Because I was under the mistaken assumption that I'd get another monthly book really quickly after Psi-Force was canceled, because I thought I had done a good job, and it was well regarded by the editorial staff. But that next monthly title wasn't dropping in my lap, which meant I had to kind of work my way back into earning it, because I had been given Psi-Force kind of quickly. I only sold like 2 or 3 stories before Shooter named me the monthly writer in that book. So that's what I did. I basically earned my way back in, and the editor who offered me New Warriors was Danny Fingeroff, and it took him a long time to make the decision to take the risk on a younger writer. And it worked out really well for everybody, because the book was very, very successful, and very well received by fans, by retailers, and by internal editorial. So that's that. New Warriors really made my writing career more than anything else. X-Men made my financial career, and X-Men is what fuels any real popularity for the most part that I have now. Is nostalgia driven, and a lot of that is because of X-Men and how much X-Men was selling back then. But as far as where I made my bones, that was New Orleans. Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz put the group together and debuted them in Thor with the full expectation of launching a monthly title that Tom wasn't going to be involved in, and knew that he wasn't going to be involved in. It was basically Tom and Mark Grunwald, who was the executive editor at that time, wanting Marvel to have a version of Teen Titans, because Marvel's not a sidekick character company like DC was. So we didn't have ready-made sidekicks that we could draw from. Captain America didn't have a Bucky back then, and Spider-Man didn't have a Wet Boy as a sidekick that you can just sort of pluck and put together as a team. So we had New Mutants and that, but that wasn't really a superhero team book per se. So Tom and Ron went about the arduous task of flipping through the Marvel Universe handbook and finding whatever young characters were unaffiliated or unassociated to other ongoing titles, and then created Night Thresher as the leader of the book. And Tom prepared a Bible for the book that I honestly mostly ignored, didn't really use it, and Tom was okay with it because he saw what I was doing, and he was fine with it. And Tom is, not that much older than me, but old enough where I had a slightly different sensibility to how to approach these younger characters than he might have. So it worked out very well for all concerned. I mean, anything that happens from page 1 of issue 1 of New Warriors was me, and Mark Bagley and then Derek Robertson, the artists. I wanted that book so badly, and it took Danny a really long time to make the decision, and I mean a really long time. And when you're in the office, it's just as torturous as if you're a freelancer at home. I'm in the office every day working, and I see Danny every day, and I hear, "You're going to make a decision by this Friday. No decisions made. I'm going to make a decision by this Friday. No decisions made." When the decision finally came, it was great, because I had months of thinking about what I wanted this book to be, and that has never been duplicated in my experience in comics before, because you never have the luxury of 6 months worth of thinking in your brain what you want a book to be. So I was ready to jump at the opportunity, and Mark Bagley was ready to draw, because this was going to be his first mainstream superhero book too, and he really wanted to impress with it also. So we ripped into it. I mean, we had 6 issues, 7 issues finished before the first issue even came out, which doesn't happen that often. We were on a great schedule. We were all doing our work properly. We had a lot of lead time, so that we knew what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it. It was not beholden on the reaction of the readers. We weren't chasing our own tail, which was great, because sometimes that's to the detriment of a book. By the time readers read issue number 1, issue number 10 had already been plotted, and issue number 8 was being drawn. I mean, so the lead time was great for me, because I had that thing so figured out in my head that I had scenes and bits figured out all the way through issue 25. The opening scene of issue number 18 was already in my head when I was working on issue 4 and 5. So it was really a pleasure to get to do that book. It remains to this day my most enjoyable experience in comics, because we did a really good job. It was really well received. It sold a hell of a lot more than people expected it was going to sell. It increased in sales in its first year, which doesn't happen that often. Issue 12 sold almost twice as much as what issue 1 sold. So it was great. It was a great experience and a great opportunity too.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the book, and I really like how
you must have been if you're only asking New Warriors questions,
Sorry,
because usually the Deadpool question would have come by now. So I'm glad that it's been nothing but New Warriors so far.
Let's get to X-Force. Now, how did you join in that time? Was just Rob asking you?
No, Bob Harris asked me, because Rob was going to start plotting the book, and they all agreed that Rob wasn't ready to script yet, because he was really young and he hadn't dialogue books and everything like that. But he had so many ideas that it was a very natural progression to let him plot the book. And Bob wanted a writer that would work well with Rob, that could handle younger characters. And I'd already been doing some stuff for Bob I did a New Mutant script for him when Louise had a vacation and couldn't do the script. I'd done some classic X-Men backups, things like that. And Rob knew me too, because we'd already been in communication with each other on the phone. Rob was a very enthusiastic fan breaking in as a professional. So he was talking to lots of people, and I was one of them. So there was a familiarity there, and a comfort level, which was like, yeah, we can do this. We can have fun. And for me, I'm already writing 2 books a month and working a full-time job. I'm doing Alpha Flight and New Warriors already. Quite frankly, it was good side money. It was good extra money. Scripting a book off of somebody else's plot is easier than having to plot it yourself. And I knew it was going to sell well, because Rob's popularity was obvious and rising, and the book sales were obvious and rising. And Rob said, okay, yeah, Fabian can script this. This will be good. And told me all about the plans that he wanted to cancel New Mutants and start X-Force. And that's when I put my advertising manager hat on, because a lot of people were very skeptical about doing that. And Rob had the backing of the marketing director at Marvel, a guy named Sven Larson, and he had the backing of me, the advertising manager at Marvel, to do this, because we thought it was a really good idea. And the 3 of us were able to convince Bob that it was a good idea. Bob had to convince Tom DeFalco. Tom DeFalco had to convince Carol Kalish, the head of sales, and Mike Hobson, the publisher, because we're canceling a top 10 book and we're relaunching it. And people get scared about that. And we knew it was a great idea. We knew it would sell more. We knew it would be more thematically appropriate to what Rob wanted to do. So I was business supporting the transition from New Mutants to X-Force at the same time as I was scripting it. Look, working on that book was equal parts frustration and fun, because there was a palpable energy and excitement to everything that was going on, and that was certainly fun. The book was selling tremendously better, so that was exciting, because we were reaching more readers and making more money, so that was great. But the working process was very hectic and a little chaotic, and I don't prefer that kind of working method. And Rob does, and that's fine. I think that creative people can often can really benefit from working in controlled chaos. It's when you lose control of that chaos that you're in trouble. And I don't think Rob ever lost control of the chaos at all, but it was always chaos. And that's not my preferred method of working. When I'm telling you early in the interview, I had the opening scene of New Warriors 18 figured out in my head while I'm working on 4. You can only imagine what it's like to be scripting page 4 when you have no idea what's going to be happening on page 18 of an issue. So that it was a challenging time because the way the books were being produced was very hectic. The frenetic pace of the stories was very hectic because I felt like there was very little control in them. And Rob was leaving to form Image, which is a huge brass balls move for him and for all of the guys that did it. And I respect that they did, but they were very turbulent in their wake. And that affected our ability to try to continue the books and do the books smartly and properly in that 1 year window. And that's all it was, a 1 year window, Think about all that happened between New Mutants 98 when I started scripting and X-Force 12 when Rob left. In a 16-month window, all of this happened. So it was a little bit of a energetic mess. I didn't know what the 6-month plan really was. I didn't know the details of it. If Rob had that, it was all in his mind. I knew what was going to happen roughly the next issue, and I was scripting to a hypothetical plan for where to go. But Deadpool was a villain. He was introduced as a villain. He was Spider-Man meets Punisher, which gives you the opportunity to justify why you give him the sarcastic attitude, because I was drawing on Rob's description of Spider-Man meets Punisher. So I leaned to the Spider-Man side of it. And fans really reacted to it. But he was still a villain. And he was a villain with an ongoing subplot. And part of that is because we knew his popularity right off the bat from reader reaction. And Rob loved drawing him because Rob, enjoyed the design and that he implemented and everything else. One of the reasons he was designed the way he was is because like Todd and Eric Larson were making fun of Rob because he had to draw so many faces every single page because he was working on a team book where nobody had masks. And they got to draw a circle with 2 oval eyes on it. And, hey, look, we just got to do this and then we're done. So Rob designed a character that had that kind of cool, very stark, simplistic visual approach. So drawing him for an artist is fun because you do in some ways have to draw less detail. So that's one of the reasons Rob really dove into wanting to work on the character. For me, it was figuring out the voice in a way that makes you love to hate him. Okay, until he gets his own title, until he gets a miniseries with his name on it, then you have to decide how do you move him from being a villain to being a protagonist in his own story. And that's what Circle Chase did. It made him the protagonist in his own story, where he's no longer a villain opposing your hero, but he has something that he has to do against people who possibly are worse than him, so that the audience sympathies can lie with Deadpool, whereas they may not have 4 months earlier when he was, shooting Domino in the head or something like that. You know what I mean? So it was really just a progressive evolution, and that was born of his popularity. If he hadn't been popular, if people hadn't have liked the sarcastic attitude or liked the visual, he would have just ended up becoming a recurring villain in a comic, but it was a little mix of everything at once that led towards his escalating popularity and Marvel's realization that we want to do a miniseries with him. I mean, that actually happened early on. We had to wait. So, we had to wait until Rob decided when he was done, and then we had to wait for the storyline to play itself out, and then we had to wait for the artist Joe Madureira to be able to draw it to speed, because Joe was really young back then, just breaking in. So the reason that the Deadpool miniseries took longer to come out is all of those factors, and from there it just kept going. I had an entire proposal for the second miniseries, all 4 issues broken down. It was going to be his origin, and it got rejected out of hand by editorial. Out of hand, they said, no, we're not doing this. I said, what the hell are you talking about? I'm freaking writing the character, and here's his origin story. It's too depressing. We want it to be more fun. And I said, no, this is the story I want to tell, so I just won't tell it. And I didn't. And they hired Mark Waid to do their little romantic romp with Siren, who's 15, 20 years younger than Deadpool, and I never read it. I never read that miniseries. And I love Mark Waid, but the hell with that story. And that was it. And then I was gone from Marvel anyway, because I left and ran Acclaim Comics for 3 years. And I didn't read Deadpool comics again until I got offered Cable and Deadpool. I scripted the first 4 issues of Cable and Deadpool, roughly the first 4 issues I scripted, the way I wanted it to be, the way I wanted Deadpool's voice to be, without really having read the stuff before me. Then I went back and reread what Joe Kelly had done, and I read like the first 30 or 40 issues of the monthly comic that had started in '96. And Joe was great. Joe's an excellent writer, so there's a lot of really good stuff there. There was some stuff I didn't agree with, but you're making monthly sausages. There was a lot of good stuff there. And I realized that his take on Deadpool as a monthly character was not that different from my take on Deadpool as a monthly character. The voice was very similar. So I was confident and comfortable that I wasn't deviating from what had been done with the character before that. Considering the voice came from my head to begin with, and really was extrapolated by others. Mark extrapolated that voice and expanded on it, and Joe extrapolated on that and expanded on it, and so on and so forth. I was comfortable with doing it.
So you have a very long career. I'm just going to end on...
That's another polite way of saying I'm old.
No, because I have so much I want to ask.
No, it's a polite way of saying I'm old.
So
that's like when someone says you're a veteran writer. That's just a way of saying you're an old writer.
I apologize for that. I'm just saying that
I just want you to know, young man, I have the emotional maturity of a 14-year-old, okay? So that still keeps me very vibrant.
So what do you think of the Deadpool movies? That's what
I think the movies have been excellent. I thought the first movie was excellent. I thought the second movie was really good and had a much harder challenge ahead of it, as sequels always do, much less ones that introduce a new franchise. But I think that they did an excellent job. The writers, Paul Wernick and Rhett Reese, really understand how to control the chaos and make it work in a 2-hour movie structure. And Ryan totally understands the strength of the character is in the tragic loneliness of the character, more so even than the humor. So he always makes sure that aspect of the character infuses the movies, because it's really what you're rooting for. You're rooting for this sad, lonely guy to come through in the end happy, if you can, you know?
And lastly, what are you working on right now?
I have I don't do much comics anymore. I haven't for a while. I do a lot of non-comic stuff. But that being said, I have a couple things. One is a backup annual story in the Domino annual, which I think is coming out in August. They asked me if I wanted to write a little backup story that would explore the relationship between Domino and Cable. And I was like, yes, and I love working on those characters, so sure. And I wrote what I'm very happy with the little short story I wrote. So that'll be August, I think. But more importantly, for the last year, I've been working on a creator-owned digital comic called Outrage with Riley Brown, the artist I've worked on Cable and Deadpool with. We co-created this concept, which will be appearing on WEBTOON, which is a digital publisher. You download the WEBTOON app for free on your phone. You subscribe to it for free. You read the comics for free. So stop complaining about how much it's costing you. It is a 26-chapter story. Each chapter is about 5 pages long, roughly, and they drop once a week. It's a vertical scrolling story, so 1 panel per screen for your phones or your iPad. It'll probably appear in print somewhere down the road, but a couple of years later. The basic concept of the character is, if you're being an ass on the internet, Outrage can manifest itself through your social media device and smack the shit out of you. So Outrage bullies the bullies who bully on the internet. And it sounds like a lot of fun, and it is a lot of fun until Outrage starts bullying some people who are in positions of power and authority, and they want to know what the heck this thing is and what's going on. So the first half of the story is, who is Outrage? The second half of the story is, why is Outrage?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys.